What if the fate of a nation rested on the shoulders of one woman's desperate prayer? What if the line between a shepherd boy and a king was drawn by a single stone? This isn't just a story. It's the very soul of a people, a saga of faith, failure, and the relentless hand of destiny. This is the story of Samuel, the kingmaker, the prophet who bridged the gap between an age of judges and an era of kings. Our journey begins in the quiet hills of Ephraim, with a woman named Hannah. Her heart ached with a silence no one else could understand, the silence of an empty womb. Year after year, she would go to the tabernacle at Shiloh, her tears her only offering. Her soul poured out before God. In a world that measured a woman's worth by her children, Hannah was broken. But in her deepest despair, she made a vow. A promise that if God would only remember her, if he would grant her a son, she would give that child back to him for all the days of his life. This wasn't just a plea. It was an act of radical faith. And from that faith, a miracle was born. Samuel. His name means heard by God. True to her word, Hannah brought her young son to the temple to be raised by the high priest Eli. Imagine the sacrifice, a mother's love channeled into an offering of ultimate trust. Little Samuel, growing up in the hallowed halls of the tabernacle, was a living testament to a prayer answered. One night, a voice called to him in the darkness. Samuel. Samuel. Thinking it was Eli, he ran to the old priest, not once, but 3 times. Finally, the wise but weary Eli understood. This was no earthly voice. He instructed the boy, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" That night, in the stillness of the sanctuary, a boy learned to hear the voice of God, and a prophet was anointed. This was the turning point. The age of Eli's spiritually blind sons was ending, and a new dawn of divine communication was breaking over Israel. As Samuel grew, so did his authority. The people saw that God was with him. But the nation was restless. They looked at the surrounding kingdoms, with their powerful kings, their armies, and their earthly glory, and they felt inadequate. They were tired of the cycle of judges, of chaos followed by temporary rescue. They wanted a king. "Give us a king to judge us," they demanded, like all the other nations. This request grieved Samuel, and it displeased God. Weren't they God's chosen people? Wasn't he their true king? Their demand was a rejection, a turning away from the divine pact that had defined them. They were trading a heavenly king for an earthly one. But God, in his wisdom, instructed Samuel, "Obey the voice of the people in all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." He told Samuel to warn them of the cost of a human king. The taxes, the conscription, the loss of freedom. But the people would not listen. Their hearts were set. And so, Samuel the prophet became Samuel the kingmaker. Guided by God, he found a man named Saul, handsome, from a respected family. A man who seemed to embody everything the people wanted in a leader. Samuel anointed him with oil, a sacred act symbolizing God's choice. Saul became the first king of Israel. At first, he was humble and successful, leading Israel to victory. But the weight of the crown proved too heavy. Power began to corrupt him. He grew impatient, disobedient, and arrogant. He made sacrifices only a priest should make. He disobeyed direct commands from God. The moment of his downfall was heartbreaking. After Saul spared the king and the best livestock from a conquered enemy, directly violating God's command, Samuel confronted him. To obey is better than sacrifice, Samuel declared, his voice echoing with divine authority and sorrow. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. The Spirit of God departed from Saul, and he was left tormented, a king in name only, haunted by his own pride. The kingdom needed a new heart. And so, God sent Samuel on another secret mission, this time to the small town of Bethlehem, to the house of a man named Jesse. One by one, Jesse's strong, impressive sons passed before the prophet. But for each one, God said no. The Lord does not see as man sees, God told Samuel. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Finally, they sent for the youngest, a boy out tending the sheep. David, ruddy, with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. As soon as Samuel saw him, God said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." And there, in the quiet humility of his own home, a shepherd boy was anointed as the future king of Israel. This was a king after God's own heart. A poet, a warrior, a musician whose songs could soothe a troubled soul. He was the one who would face a giant, not with armor and a sword, but with a sling and a stone, an unwavering faith. The books of Samuel chronicle this dramatic transition. We see the tragic fall of Saul and the spectacular rise of David. We witness their overlapping lives, Saul descending into madness and jealousy, hunting David through the wilderness, while David, the anointed successor, flees for his life, yet refuses to harm God's anointed king. These stories are deeply human. They are about ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and forgiveness. They show us that even the greatest leaders are flawed, and that true strength is found not in power, but in humility and dependence on God. The narrative ends with the final days of David's reign. But the legacy of Samuel, the prophet who heard God's call in the night, echoes through eternity. He was the bridge, the faithful servant who guided a nation through one of its most pivotal transformations. His story reminds us that our deepest moments of desperation can be the birthplace of miracles. It teaches us that God often chooses the unlikely, the overlooked, the humble of heart, to accomplish His greatest purposes. And it poses a timeless question to each of us. Are we listening? Right. In the noise of our own lives, in our clamor for earthly solutions, can we still hear that quiet voice calling our name in the dark? If this message resonated with you, subscribe and share it with others. We would love to hear your thoughts, so please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this journey.